welcome to John Redmann, Power of Attorney, the show that aims to empower you through knowledge of the law. I'm Attorney John Redmann.
And I'm Shauna Sanford. Today's show focuses on an issue that is personal to so many people out there, domestic violence. It is a serious problem, not only in our nation, but right here in Louisiana parishes, cities, and communities. But there is help available, and for the next half hour, we're going to delve into the state's domestic abuse law.
How can the law help protect those who are victims of domestic abuse? Attorney John Krentel will be joining us to talk about this and other ways the courts handle domestic abuse cases, and we'll also be joined by Gale Standifer, the Executive Director of the Metropolitan Center for Women and Children of New Orleans.
Well, I'm looking forward to talking to both of our guests, but before we get to that segment, let's just talk a little bit about the law. Would you say that this is a law that needs to be tweaked? Is it effective as is? Is there an enforcement problem? What would you say about it?
Well, I know that there are critics who say that the law needs to be, number one, enforced, that the law also needs to be tweaked where there appear to be loopholes. Certainly domestic abuse is very much a part of what happens every day, and we read about deaths from domestic altercations. But on the other hand, education is also lacking. Part of what we hope to do, empowering our viewers here on the show, is to let people know that they have options. You don't have to just sit there and be a victim and hide in the corner and hope that that bully spouse or boyfriend won't get too upset today. There's options and there's rights, and we're going to have a very important discussion and give you a lot of good information
That's
today.
right, and we have some great guests who are coming up. Attorney John Krentel and Gale Standifer from the Metropolitan Center for Women and Children of New Orleans will join us in just a moment to talk about the domestic abuse law and how you can protect yourself or help someone you love. So stay right there. We'll be right back. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Well, if you're just joining us, we are focusing on domestic violence. There are far too many stories of women and men who die at the hands of their husbands, their wives, or other intimate partners. Attorney John Krentel has been on Power of Attorney before, and he's here again, as well as Gale Standifer. She is the Executive Director of the Metropolitan Center for Women and Children of New Orleans. Both of them are here to talk about domestic abuse and how the law can help those in need. Thank you both so much for being here. It's an important topic, so we appreciate your time. And Gale, let's just start with you. When we hear the term domestic abuse, we all think we know what that means, but for the sake of clarity, explain, what are we talking about when we talk about domestic abuse?
It's a very broad term. Typically people think of physical abuse of a partner or a spouse, but it's also can be emotional abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse. There are lots of different ways in which people are abusive to each other, but it's a lot more than just physical abuse, and I think that's what usually people think of.
Covers a lot of ground.
And let's also make sure we're clear on who's affected. It's not just partners in a relationship. Children are covered in this definition, and
right. It's anybody in the family, actually. And the family is loosely defined as anybody you're in a relationship with. So it could be a boyfriend, an ex-boyfriend, a live-in, could be same-sex partners. So it's anyone that you consider to be as if they are your family.
And tell us about your center. Who do you help, and how does it work? How can anyone just come to your center?
Well, they would need to call us first. And what we would do is screen them and try to figure out an immediate safety plan for them. Are they in immediate danger? Do they have time to come in and meet with our attorney and explore legal issues? Do they need to actually go into hiding to get away from the person? Do we need to contact the police? There are a lot of factors, so they would call us first. But basically, if they come to us, we will take care of them, make sure that they are kept as safe as we possibly can keep them.
Very important. Aside from having a sort of a call for help to you, is there a charge for this?
Yeah, I mean, there are criminal charges involved.
No. What I mean, are there?
Oh no,
do they need to have
that we
a credit
do.
card when they call you?
Oh no.
I didn't think so, but I want to be clear for our viewers.
No, everything that we do is completely free, and it's also as confidential as we possibly can keep it. There are a couple of instances where we might have to report something, but typically it's confidential and it's definitely free.
Well, Gale, you brought up charges. There are charges when it comes to this issue, and John, you know this very, very well. What are some of the big legal issues that come to the forefront when we talk about domestic abuse?
The major issue, Shauna, is the necessity for the abused person, whether it's a man or a woman, to seek the protection of the court through the appropriate provisions in Louisiana law pertaining to the prevention of domestic violence. And it's clear, and Dale can certainly comment on this, that restraining orders, specifically protective orders, are a very effective tool in preventing subsequent incidents of abuse for the victim. It doesn't eliminate the possibility. A protective order is a piece of paper, right, and it doesn't, it's not bulletproof, but it's certainly extremely helpful, because most individuals who commit these acts of abuse will cease and desist from doing so, will stop from doing it if the authority of the court imposes upon them very clear rules and regulation and penalties for violating the protective order.
Well, I think
Dale, would you agree with that?
I think that's very important. I really would like for both of you to comment on this, because I think the perception is that it is just that, a piece of paper. What good is that piece of paper going to do? And we certainly have heard of many stories where women have gotten these protective orders and something even worse happens to them. That is the perception out there. But when you say most times these actually do provide protection, explain that to us.
Well, one of our roles is to actually screen each case. If I am involved in a relationship with someone who's in and out of parish prison and who doesn't care, they're going to laugh at the protective order. They're going to say, all right, so what? It's a civil order. I don't care. But if I'm married to a prominent person in the community, they're going to be extremely embarrassed about the information that I have now shared publicly with the court system, and they may cease and desist just out of sheer embarrassment, or they may fear the legal consequences. The issue too, though, you have to really be careful, because if a woman is in a very rural area, very isolated area, when somebody is coming to come get you and all you have is that piece of paper, you have to call 911 and they have to respond. So can you get to a phone? And can they get there quickly enough to protect you? Also, once they get on the scene, the law enforcement, they're going to realize, wait a minute, this lady was already frightened. She has a piece of paper. It's giving her temporary, and John can cover some of the basics of that, but maybe temporary custody of the children, temporary use of the home, some other things that are actually in the protective order. The law enforcement officers typically will take that much more seriously.
Absolutely.
So we recommend that women do it. But we also recommend there are cases where all you're going to do is just really make him mad. And maybe that wouldn't be a good instance to do it.
Yeah.
The beauty of Dale's work in the community, and the unfortunate fact that it has been severely cut by the consequences of the financial circumstances in Louisiana. But back to the beauty of our program is that, and the work that they do, is they tailor individual plans for each person, woman primarily, who calls, and she assesses the degree of potential lethality, the dangerousness of the perpetrator or the abuser, as she just alluded to. People, just as a kind of a technical point, everybody has, according to Freud, 3 basic personality structures: the id, the ego, and the superego. And those words can sort of stand for the child, the parent, and the executor, basically in the middle, the adult, if you will. The people, as Dale just described, who are coming out of parish prison, with frequent arrests, et cetera, their superego, or their parent that tells them behave, is very weak.
Right.
That, as she just clearly presented, is a protective order is not going to stop them. They need external structure. Be it a jail or some kind of other very structured environment, so that they don't misbehave and hurt other people. But the majority of people will have problems dealing with their rages, and they might strike out at a family member, but they will be remorseful, truly remorseful, not just fake remorse. And that protective order imposed by the court, as she clearly stated, will not only will be embarrassing to them, but will get through to them, so that their superego, their parent infrastructure in their cells, in their deeper selves, is strengthened by the judge saying, don't hurt your wife, don't hurt your child, both from the bench, because the judge will say that, as well as that document, that they then, it provides them with a structure.
But you made a very good point, and you did definitely point this out, that protective order needs to be very specific and very detailed. Is that not always the case?
Yes, they are.
They are.
They really are. They're more detailed than you might think, and they're precise. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, and just to make sure that I'm keeping up with you.
Sure.
The fact of the matter is, just because occasionally, and it's a reality, some people they're scofflaws. They don't care that there's a piece of paper.
Right.
But you're in a much better position when you call 911 to say,
exactly,
my awful ex-boyfriend or boyfriend, I've got a restraining order against him. He's banging on the door, or he called me. He said he's coming over here. I'm feared for my life. The police will give much greater respect to that. If they show up at your door and you've never gotten a restraining order, then the cops are going to think, you know what, I'm going to arrest both of you, or I'm not going to. It's a he said, she said. That restraining order has real value.
It does. And Dale,
and that bad person who doesn't know how to behave, you get arrested a few times, you will land in jail,
which is not pleasant.
And that does have a taming effect, even if you don't deep inside of yourself say, okay, I'm learning to behave. That has a taming effect.
When the police come to the scene, usually it's chaos. People are crying, screaming, everybody's accusing everybody else of something else. But seeing that protective order, they know that a judge, who they have respect for, has actually reviewed facts and evidence and believes that she's in danger. And so it's sort of like a message to the law enforcement, this is legitimate.
That settles the argument.
It does. So, I mean, I think that's another reason why it's terribly, terribly important.
But how do you speak? Because, any number of people are watching this program, and we know that this is an issue that cuts across all racial lines, all socioeconomic lines. Everybody can be and is affected by this issue. What do you say to the woman out there or the person out there who right now might be in a situation where they need a protective order, but the fear is so great? And the follow-through, I understand, is very important on behalf of the victim in this case.
Right. Absolutely.
So
what they need to do is come to us, and we will support them. We will walk with them. We will have people go with them to court if they're afraid. We have an attorney who can actually help them fill out the paperwork. We will explain the system as best we can, and we will put them in support groups if they want to, or individual counseling. And so that's our part of it, is to take care of the fear. The lawyers take care of the legal process.
And John, while you're talking about that, we have the number to your center. We're going to go ahead and put that up on the screen so folks can, in fact, get that information. But John, continue.
Well, what Dale said makes perfect sense. And for a person out there, a woman out there who is fearful and hesitant, if she takes one little step to call Dale's center, the Center for Women and Children, and make that first call and speak with one of her counselors, that is the first step. And if that is successful, then she can take the second step to proceed as Dale would, counselors will direct. It's certainly better to light one candle than curse the darkness. That's so positive, but that one little step, just take a little step. Don't try to change everything, because it's not going to all change in an instant.
And let me make an added comment to that. A lot of battered women, and part of my background studies was in psychology. One of my degrees is in psychology. A lot of these women feel they don't deserve to be loved. They don't deserve, and so they will allow themselves to be battered. And what I try, in the occasions where I've counseled people in these situations before I recommend them to domestic abuse lawyers and counseling centers like yours, is do it for your children. Do it for yourself, because the example you set for your kids sets a pattern, because often victims of abuse grew up in households where abuse occurred.
Absolutely.
So
some of us become social workers.
And God bless you for that. So I want to get to the financial impacts that have occurred with cuts, but we're going to have to
and there are some big cuts coming
cuts.
that certainly could affect centers like yours and several around the state. We're going to tackle that when we get back. Coming up next, we will take on that issue, plus we will answer your questions. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.